Okay, a call to order the Adams Conservation Commission meeting Thursday, May 13th, 2021. And it's approximately 6:30. We're going to read the pandemic waiver and Pam will read it.
Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 30A, subsection 18, in the Governor's March 15 and July 2nd, 2020 orders, imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Town of Adams Conservation Commission is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort has been made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. We have posted today's agenda in accordance with open meeting law, which included the call information for the meeting. Despite our best efforts, we are not able to provide for real-time access for the public to participate in today's meeting. A recording of this meeting can be made available by request, as this meeting is being recorded using the Zoom platform. As we are participating remotely, please note that all votes taken during this meeting will be a roll call vote.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We have the approval of the minutes. Request the members to approve the minutes of April 8th, 2021.
Any additions or deletions?
I think we're going to go with them there.
How about the folks? Any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Nothing I could see.
Okay. I move the acceptance of the minutes dated April 29th, 2021.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 We'll vote.
We'll do a roll call.
Yep.
Tom?
Aye.
Natasha?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Jim? Aye. Okay, unanimous. Okay, that's that. We did the Pan Am last time, right?
Continuance of notice of intent for Cumberland Farms.
Okay, you've got that.
Do you want Pam to read the case again?
I don't have anything else from
Oh, okay.
Cumberland Farm.
Okay, it's just the continuance right there.
Continuance of a notice of intent filed by Cumberland Farms Incorporated for property located at 5 Elm Street, 89 and 95 Commercial Street. Proposed construction of a gas station and convenience store facility.
Mr. Chairman, before we start, I think it's important for the record, since this is a Zoom meeting, for Pam to identify all of the participants in the meeting.
Sure. The attendees of tonight's Zoom meeting for Cumberland Farms is Diane Whalen, Peter Yeske, Chuck Meek, Andrew Plott, Dan Wells, Donna Season, Jeff Randall, Tom Reedy, Luke DiStefano, members Brian Bishop, Tom Robinson, Chairman James Fassel, and Natasha Bordeaux, and myself as host.
She's in.
Donna Season.
Yes.
And Emily Stockton.
Okay.
Sorry, Emily.
Okay.
You're right in the middle of it.
Jeff Randall.
Okay, now. Okay, Emily, you want to,
Well, I think you could ask the applicants if they have anything as a way of introduction, and then you can hear from the commission's consultants, Emily Stockman and Jeff Randall. That's what I would suggest.
okay. So we're going to ask our consultants, Emily Stockman and Jeff Randall, to give their renditions
Right, but first, let's hear from the applicants, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, that's,
I don't know if Peter, do you want to make the introduction that we're getting all back together again?
Sure, and I was going to turn it right over to Tom and Luke, but good. Thank you for having us back. We're thrilled to be back in front of the commission. We're in receipt of the comments from your consultants, and I'm not going to belabor it. I think Tom and Luke, I'll turn it right over to you, Luke, and I believe we submitted our responses, so Luke can give a brief summary.
Yeah, and good evening. For the record, Luke DiStefano with Bowler, 352 Turnpike Road in Southborough, Massachusetts. I think because everyone is so familiar with the project and because we do have the peer review consultants on the line, I think my initial opening remarks will be brief and basically say that coming out of the last commission meeting, as well as a follow-up meeting with city staff and some of the peer review consultants, I think based on the revised plans and the comment response letters that were submitted in mid-April back from our office to the city, I think for the most part, in our opinion, we've addressed not only the DEP comments that were provided by Circuit Rider Mark Stinson, but the comment letter submitted on behalf of the peer review engineers. And rather than go through about 9 or 10 pages of comment responses, we thought it would be more beneficial to effectively answer any additional outstanding questions that may still be lingering based on the consultant's review of the response package submitted. And I say that with the understanding that there is one condition as it relates to the mitigation for impacts to the riverfront zone that we are still negotiating some sort of agreement with the city where Cumberland Farms would contribute to, I believe it's the Pex Brook Stream Bank Enhancement Project as the mitigation to help mitigate the impacts of the Cumberland Farms development. So that is a condition or a comment that I don't think we've fully vetted, but we're more than prepared to talk through that tonight in hopes that we can get a positive recommendation from the commission and hopefully an order of conditions and a vote. And with that, again, the entire team is more than happy to answer any questions the commission, the consultants, or any audience members may have. Thank you.
thank you very much. At this point, Emily, do you have any comments to make or direction to take?
Thank you, Chairman. For the record, my name is Emily Stockman. I'm a professional wetland scientist, and I'm partaking in this project as a peer reviewer for the Adams Conservation Commission. I am more than happy to delve into the details of compliance under the riverfront redevelopment standards and the mitigation of off-site associated with Pex Brook, as Luke referred to. But I would like to pause first and just inquire as to whether Jeff Randall from Hill Engineer would like the opportunity to circle back regarding the stormwater before we delve into the meat and potatoes of redevelopment.
Okay, Jeff?
Yes, Jeff Randall from Hill Engineers, also a town Adams resident, 83 Welling Road. So yeah, I'll be brief because I do think they covered most of my engineering questions. I covered the 3 topics that we talked about the last time: the stormwater, the engineering of the site in general, the general grading that might impact the abutters, and then the stormwater standards. And those are the 3 topics that I covered. They went through their response letter, which was still a draft. I don't know if that was finalized and sent to the town, but the draft one that I downloaded on April 20th was dated April 13th, just for the record. And I think they went through basically and answered everything that I asked about. Filling out, adding additional information, the inverts, changing some of the details, that kind of stuff, syncing up the drawings with the stormwater report. The only item that I saw that's was still checked wrong. It's just one thing. It's standard 7 in the stormwater report was still checked as, it's still checked as redevelopment. It should be a redevelopment portion mix of both new and redevelopment. But that was the only item that I saw that wasn't addressed. They did add swales next to the butters' houses to pick up any water that might run off site, that kind of stuff. The stuff that always turns into a nightmare for the town and for everyone involved. So that was basically my thoughts on it.
Okay. Emily, would you like to continue?
Certainly. Before I delve into 58.5, did the commission have any questions about the stormwater?
No.
Okay. So I am in receipt of some conceptual plans for the off-site work associated with Peck's Brook. I am also in receipt of some conditional language that I believe was discussed between the town and Cumberland Farms. And at the request of the commission and the town, I did move forward with a draft of an incomplete draft of some special conditions as they pertain to the riverfront redevelopment standards. This was a fairly rapid turnaround as I received the email request at about 5 o'clock while I was on the road. I have submitted that draft, I believe, to Hill Engineers. I believe Donna has a copy, and Pam, I believe you have a copy for the commission. My intent is to go over this during this evening's discussion. If members, if the applicant would like to have a copy to read along with, Pam, I don't know if you can multitask and email that out to them. I can try, but I don't have a complete email listing.
Emily, I forwarded it to Peter. Did you receive? Peter, Luke, Tom, did you receive?
I am in receipt of it. You know what, Tom, I don't think you were copied on this, so I'm just going to forward it to you.
I've got it, Peter.
Great, so that's wonderful. Again, this was a fairly rapid turnaround. So I'm glad everyone has a copy of all my typos and we can go through that this evening.
Just to interrupt Emily, what would be helpful, Pam, if Pam could leave the room and send it to our 2 commissioners that are on the Zoom, because I don't think they have it in their hands. Is that possible? Okay, so Natasha and Brian, it's coming your way.
So the draft begins with some very straightforward findings, which I believe we can go over while we're waiting those emails to travel through the interweb. The commission has discussed at previous hearings that they will be reviewing this project as a redevelopment. So the first finding that I recommend simply states that the project site contains protected riverfront area, which was degraded prior to 1996. That's a requirement of the redevelopment. The second finding is that the commission finds that the work meets the riverfront area redevelopment performance standards cited as submitted under the plans of record and with the special conditions contained herewith. I'm going to pause there with a question to the applicants, and I believe Mr. Randall brought this up. The most recent plans that we have are titled draft. Does the commission have a final set of plans?
We were expecting to get a final set of comments back that we never got, I think, in the rush. So the plans that were sent do indicate draft. There have been no real changes since then. And we can certainly get a set of final plans and the final response letters, which again will not be changed, back to the commission at any point.
Excellent, Luke. Will you maintain can we then maintain the April 12th date and just remove any watermarks that indicate draft?
We
So
can.
we're in agreement that that's the plan that's being reviewed this evening?
Yes, and the only other change, just in the spirit of full disclosure, we did note a zoning error on the plan. And what I mean by that is we had an incorrect zone listed. So we just made that modification, but it has zero bearing on the Conservation Commission review. So we plan to keep the revision date the same, and you'll see the same plans.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One of the first requirement for redevelopment is that the property was degraded prior to 96. The second is that there is an improvement. At this time, based on the applicant's response, they are asserting that the planting of native species within the riverfront will result in an improvement. The only recommendation that I have to clarify that is that the landscaping plan provides a planting list that is not of native species. So the narrative response says that there are native species, but the list on the plans of record is not native. So I would recommend that prior to the planting, that the permittee submit to the commission for review a native planting list and nursery source. Again, this would be for the improvement planting within the riverfront area. I acknowledge that the site plans include landscape planting outside of the riverfront area. Certainly that's outside of the jurisdiction of the commission, so they would not be looking for changes there, just for the native planting credit that the applicant is seeking. Are there any questions or discussion about that from either the commission or the applicant?
None.
Okay.
My next question is for Mr. Randall, because we didn't have an opportunity to speak in the last 45 minutes. There are some assertions in the applicant's response that the stormwater management proposed under the application will go beyond the required standards. And I was hoping that Jeff could opine whether or not the stormwater is exceeding the standards or meeting the standards.
Yeah,
Yes, I would say that, yes, Emily, they did do stuff in excess of just the redevelopment part, which you'd say is a new development. Some of the redevelopment of the site has actually been incorporated into that. So I would say yes, it does exceed just the new impacts on the site. So
Okay.
the existing.
With that being said, not included in the draft before everyone this evening, but I would recommend that the commission include a finding that in addition to the native planting, that the stormwater management that is proposed exceeds the standards, and that is also being considered as an improvement for the site.
Okay,
so many,
aye.
you need,
So
do you need a motion on that? Oh, okay, go ahead.
So this is great. We're making progress. We've met the first of the redevelopment standards. Moving on to my fourth paragraph. At this time, do all members of the commission have an emailed copy of the special condition draft,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
How about
including those at home?
Brian?
I don't know if I could do both. I'm not that computer literate.
Brian, just have me pause if you need me to go over something again.
Okay.
I don't think I could do it. Okay, so the next finding that I would recommend is that the project results in the net increase of impervious surface within riverfront area of 12,632 square feet. That number has been calculated based on the information provided by the applicant, that the total proposed degraded area is 18,582, but the existing degraded, which they get credit for, was 5,850. Does anyone want to opine on that calculation? Luke, does that sort of match what?
Yeah, what was the total? I think, just to be clear, you mentioned 18,582.
482.
Yeah, okay. We had 18,482, and then the existing of 5,850 is correct.
Okay, all right, excellent. Because that we have an increase in impervious, which is degraded, and that increase is closer, you know, it encompasses the property. It does not comply with standards C, D, and E under the redevelopment. Therefore, riverfront area mitigation is required under 58.5 G and H.
Okay,
Okay, so if there are no questions there, I will move on to the special conditions which detail the requirements of an off-site mitigation. It is my understanding that there has been negotiations with the town and there's funding proposed to ensure that the mitigation will take place. Under our state regulations, we do not have an avenue for an applicant to simply write a check. The project has to be tied to a real world mitigation that must be implemented, completed, and monitored for compliance. And that real world project has to have some square footage associated with it. Fortunately, the town, and I mean Donna, has worked diligently to identify some potential off-site mitigation areas. Peck Brook is a perennial stream, therefore it is protected as a river and has an associated riverfront area. It is also a cold water fisheries resource and a tributary to the Hoosic River. So it is my opinion that this is a suitable site for mitigation. It's important that our cold water fisheries have clean water. We don't want to have banks that are destabilized and eroding and producing turbidity. Cold water fisheries are also important from the perspective of water temperature. And so we like to see shading over that habitat to support our delicate cold water fishery species. It's my understanding that this order of conditions for the Cumberland Farms development will be tied to the mitigation of Peck Road from the Harmony Street abutment to a point 220 feet north, which will include both sides of the stream bank. And so I have included the special condition that this would meet the requirement for mitigation under 58.5. I provided some calculations based off of a concept plan that was provided to me dated August 12th, 2020, which then states that the mitigation shall result in the stabilization of 440 feet of the perennial stream bank, and that the mitigation would result in the native planting of 7,700 square feet of the inner riverfront area. To specify the mitigation further, I have cited the concept plan. Unfortunately, it doesn't have much of a title block. So the best I could do was concept plan and the date. If there is another plan out there that has a prepared by or a title block, please let me know. And we could formalize that citation in a greater manner. The native plantings and seeding, we don't have a lot of detail on that because it is just a concept plan. So I have stated that the native plantings will be installed along the 5.5 foot width swath from the top of the slope outward as depicted on the concept plan. And further detailed that native plantings shall be installed within planting pockets within the 12-foot wide modified rock-fill stream stabilization slopes. Plantings and seedings shall be installed to provide wildlife habitat, including food source and shade canopy over Peck Brook. Peck Brook is a cold water fishery resource and a tributary to the Hoosick River. Prior to the planting, a revised plan depicting planting pockets, locations, native plant list, and nursery shall be submitted to the commission for review and approval. Are there any questions about those details?
No,
So is everyone familiar with the portion of Pexbrook that we're trying to work on? And I have to give credit where credit is due. It was actually Jeff Randall that reminded us we were working on this stream. And it's like, oh, eureka. So thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah.
Yeah, full disclosure. Oh, I'm sorry, Emily, but full disclosure, Hill is working on the existing site plan for VHB for Pexbrook,
Okay.
just for the record. So it is not complete at this time.
Because this is a conceptual plan, I felt that it was important for the commission to state the requirements tied to moving the offsite mitigation from concept to finalization. So the following paragraph states that the Pexbrook offsite riverfront area mitigation requires the filing of a separate notice of intent with the Adams Conservation Commission. Which I believe is in process.
Yes.
That on the following page, the next paragraph addresses that the Pexbrook offsite riverfront area mitigation requires the implementation, complete construction, and subsequent compliance monitoring for at least 2 years after the first growing season following the completion of the construction. For the commission, I stated at least 2 years because the regulatory standard is that plantings and stabilization be monitored for the 2 years. I acknowledge that the commission has the authority to require additional monitoring, but is the commission comfortable with 2 years?
yes,
Yeah, I think 2 years is sufficient.
So this is where there's a little bit of a challenge. So this condition is going to need to be reiterated when the notice of intent for Pexbrook comes before the commission. You're going to need to remember that these two projects are now tied together and that you're requiring 2 years of monitoring. Very important for all parties to understand is that the
Emily,
That's all right, that's all right. Go
Donna has something to say.
ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay. The Pexbrook offsite riverfront area mitigation as detailed above is a requirement of this order of conditions. A certificate of compliance will not be issued for the project DP number 86-148 without the completion and monitoring of the Pexbrook offsite mitigation. Are there any questions about that requirement?
So in other words, the completion of the Cumberland Farms project cannot take place until the completion of the Bexbrook project? Is that what we're saying?
Yes, that is a requirement for the performance standards. What can happen, and now just so that everyone's aware, say for example, that all of the work on the Cumberland Farms development is complete,
Mhm.
but the mitigation is the timeline is further down. If Cumberland Farms wanted to, they could request a partial certificate of compliance from the commission for a sign off solely on Cumberland Farms, but the order of conditions is still going to be need to be upheld for the mitigation until that's complete. They cannot get a full certificate of compliance until the mitigation is complete.
And can we explore that for a minute? Because I have to put myself in Cumberland Farms' shoes. It appears to me that's somewhat unreasonable if they, coordinating with the town, install the native planting materials for the stabilization project. That is the town's responsibility. We will be the applicant to the conservation. The commission will impose conditions on us. I definitely understand the follow through from project to project, but why, if the 2-year condition is imposed on the town, we will take that, we will go forward with that. Why can't once they install the work and we have a successful project that's reviewed by the commission, why can't they get their full compliance at that point? And then it returns to the town to do the 2-year monitoring with the commission.
So the monitoring is typically a requirement to confirm that the work has been done in full compliance. And so it's not uncommon without that monitoring that, you can have fatalities with plantings, you can have issues, with stream bank stabilization that would require, a corrective plan of action. And so the commissions and the DP typically want that monitoring period to know that not only was the construction complete, but the full, I'm trying not to mix terms, but it was complete and successful after that 2-year period. If the commission waives the mitigation, they open themselves up to, if the commission waives the monitoring, they open themselves up to the possibility that the mitigation fails post-construction.
But they would still have another applicant, the town of Adams, to bring compliance issues to, for correction to.
So that is a conversation for the town and the, and the applicant and the commission, whether or not there's a comfort level of removing that component of responsibility from Cumberland Farms. If they're only responsible for monitoring, to the completion of the restoration, that language can be, adjusted. But that's really a conversation for the voting authorities and the applicant.
I mean, do you understand? I'm just, in a way, the town and Cumberland Farms are kind of in a partnership.
Correct.
With this new project.
And the town is taking the responsibility of the installation of whatever you're going to do, the stabilization of the banks and so on and so forth. So if it fails, it's the town's responsibility to correct it.
Right, and I'm just
Not
putting
Cumberland
myself,
Farms.
right, and I'm sure they're willing to do the partnership. They want to be joined at the hip with us forever and ever. So. So does that?
I think that Luke's sign in his back sort of says what we are.
Family.
We're a family. We put up with each other in a lot of different situations on this project. So I think we should treat this as a family affair when we finish it too.
Yeah, but I believe that your point is well taken. I don't believe Cumberland Farms during the monitoring portion should be responsible. I believe the responsibility lies then with the town. And the Conservation Commission's responsibility is to the town and the town to the Conservation Commission. I agree with what you're saying.
Okay.
Okay,
So I'm just doing some wordsmithing on that condition, and I will revise it to state that the mitigation requires implementation and complete construction with a post-construction inspection by the Conservation Commission. So essentially, for them to get their certificate of compliance, you would have to do a site visit anyways, in addition to the site visit on Cumberland Farm and that development. You would also visit the Peck Brook site to confirm that all of the stream bank stabilization and plantings had been completed.
right.
Okay.
And could I just ask one question here? So for the record, Tom Reedy, attorney with Bacon Wilson out of Amherst. I appreciate all the discussion and the concepts that we're looking to employ here, but just to put a finer point on it to make sure that, and I don't anticipate that it would be this, but just for everybody's clarification, once we get our partial certificate of compliance for the work that has been done on the Cumberland Farm site, we would be able to receive our certificate of occupancy from the building commissioner, provided we meet all of those other things. So put another way, our partial certificate of compliance would be sufficient for us to begin to operate at the site, understanding that a full certificate of compliance would not issue until this brook work, for simpler terms, would be done. And I just want to make sure that that's the understanding, and that I don't know that it needs to be memorialized. If so, great. I think we've got to pay attention to, planning board decision coming up in a couple of weeks, making sure there's no condition that requires it. To me, it's not necessarily this commission that has to condition it that way, but it's others. But I just wanted to make sure that we weren't missing anything, and that once we get that partial, we're okay to open the store.
Do you have any comments?
Jim, was that for me?
Yeah, maybe Emily, we should do that.
I mean,
Rather than put everyone on the spot individually, I just would like to make sure everyone is aware of what we're doing and what we have committed ourselves to.
so I think, first of all, Mr. Chairman, to address Mr. Reedy's, I would, Emily, do you want to comment on that? You or Jeff? I mean, I think that what Tom has outlined is absolutely correct. They would be allowed to open the store. There would be no withholding of a certificate of occupancy with a partial compliance ordered by the commission.
Donna, I concur with you. That is my understanding. I'm not an attorney and I'm not familiar with the requirements of other boards. But that is my understanding, and in fact, why the regulations have the avenue for a partial certificate.
And I'm sorry.
And if anyone has any comments, they can make them, or they can, by their silence, affirm our feelings for the project.
Well, I just to follow up and close out on this thought, I think what Mr. Reedy has outlined is an important point. It provides a safeguard to Cumberland Farms should the town not advance the project in a timely way. So we do not envision that. We would work hard not to do that,
Right.
but it does provide them some certainty that they will be able to move forward with their important project. So.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Emily, let's continue.
Okay, so actually Donna provided me with a wonderful segue. So one of the questions I had for the commission, not included in this draft, is that with offsite mitigation, the order of condition often includes timelines and deadlines for certain steps. I did not know if the commission wanted to include that. It would essentially be something like you would require that the NOI would be filed, you know, within a year for the offsite mitigation, and you would require that the actual construction be done within 3 years from the issuance. But I wanted to defer to the commission and the town if you think those are reasonable timelines.
I firmly believe in timelines, mainly because it holds people accountable. I don't know what the town is proposing for a timeline, but we would be looking for that, definitely looking for that. We want to be able to accommodate Cumberland Farms, and we also want to hold ourselves responsible for meeting our goals. So once we establish the timeline, those are our goals. That's fine.
They can be part of the conditions, right?
No, it's part of the NOI.
Part of the NOI itself.
I thought is that, am I correct? Is the timeline as it relates to the Peck Brook project?
Yeah, the timeline would be
Associated with the NOI.
the timeline would be as it relates to Peck Brook, but it would be stated in this order of conditions
Okay,
so that you could track it.
okay, but the only issue I would have with that is the town prepared to give us a timeline?
Okay, can I ask a question? Because I'm a little confused. How can the commission impose a timeline on Cumberland Farms that the town has to perform? I can see a finding where the parties have identified that a notice of intent will be filed for the Hexbrook project within 6 months or 12 months, and project construction would start then, but I don't see how we can impose a condition on the applicant.
So by teaming up on an off-site project, the two permits are going to overlap.
Okay.
The commission, I think it keeps the schedule and the findings a little clear if there are deadlines, even if there's language that those deadlines can be extended. The concern is from past permitting attempts where mitigations off-site were approved, but never implemented, you know, and so I think that by stating already that it has to be completed to receive the certificate of compliance addresses that concern. But if the parties have any interest in holding to a timeline, it should be stated in the order as well.
And I think maybe on behalf of Cumberland Farms, what I would say is, and I can appreciate that there needs to be some nexus typically for offsite mitigation, given the fact that it's likely the applicant who is who would have the genesis of that new NOI. But here, where it's a little bit different, where we're coming in not as the tip of the spear, if you will, on this new NOI, and it's the town's doing, somewhat to what Donna had said. And then I think your suggestion's spot on, Emily, that I think that full cert of compliance is really what's going to hold our feet to the fire here, instead of tying town action or inaction, frankly, to our order of conditions, because if that was the link, then we could potentially have an enforcement order on ours for something that hasn't happened with their NOI. So I think I would prefer just to keep it as the cert of compliance as that piece, if the board, if the commission and Emily, you're okay with that.
I don't understand.
Okay,
I don't understand.
we're not understanding what you're suggesting, Tom, versus what Emily was.
Sure. So Emily suggested, as I heard it, two things. One thing she said was that traditionally with offsite mitigation, she has found that if you don't put in some timeline, then who knows if they're ever going to do it. But typically the them that is going to do it is the applicant under that initial NOI that is getting this order of conditions. So if Cumberland Farms were to say, we are going to do a separate project all by ourselves, I think that timeline is completely reasonable.
Yes.
However, given the fact that the town is the one that is controlling that project and Cumberland is along for the ride, as you had suggested, Donna, to tie Cumberland's order of conditions to town performance. And if the town were to not perform in that timeline, ostensibly what could happen is an enforcement order could issue against Cumberland Farms for the town's inaction. And so I would prefer to take that timeline and not have it implemented. And rather, the safeguard is that Cumberland cannot get their full certificate of compliance until it helps in that brook project. And obviously, if the town, for some reason, in the next couple of years says we're not doing it anymore, we can come back in for an amendment to the order of conditions based on those changed circumstances and talk about different offsite mitigation. But that to me seems like a clean way to allow everything to move forward with the safeguards in place to make sure it happens, but not to tie necessarily town performance to what's happening with the Cumberland Farms order of conditions.
Yes, I
Perfect.
would agree.
I agree.
Okay, so then we will keep the draft as it stands. Simply just reasserting that Cumberland Farms won't get their full CNC until the offsite mitigation is fully complete. The only other note that I have, which I didn't add in so that the commission and the town are aware of this, as part of mitigation credit, there is a section under 1058.5H that states essentially once a mitigation area, always a mitigation area. So this reach of Peck's Brook from the Harmony Street abutment down 220 feet to the north will be a no-touch mitigation area in perpetuity. I don't believe that the town had any plans on doing anything in that area other than to restore it, but you should just be aware that it will be a mitigation.
Okay, understood.
And then I left on the tail end of the draft the language in regards to funding. I'm a little uncomfortable with that because, as I said at the onset, the state doesn't really have an avenue for just saying, oh, funding. But I understand that the town of Cumberland need to have some sort of agreement. I don't know if the funding aspect comes into play with the order of conditions or under some sort of separate documentation. And I'm going to let the town and the applicant speak to that.
Well, we have discussed this at length and, there's the opportunity, or I guess one way of approaching it would be for Cumberland Farms to have a contractor and we would have a contractor. I, in terms of managing a project, would not prefer that. I think it gets messy and quite frankly, it just sets up a situation where, two contractors are blaming the other for any failures. So it appeared to us that the town needed to have, we have all along planned on designing this project, publicly bidding this project and getting it constructed. We would be bringing it to the Conservation Commission. We fully intended this would be a notice of intent project. I think Emily has already enhanced the project by pointing out we need to do more native planting. So I actually look forward to the opportunity to work in conjunction with Cumberland Farms on this, because I think already we've enhanced the concept of the project. But I really do not see a clean way, and again, I'm trying to put my hat on if I was Cumberland Farms and also the town. It just seems to me that they've made a commitment. They will be a partner in the sense of, we'll be working together. There's not going to be a formal partnership agreement, but there will be some type of agreement Mr. Yeski, Tom Reedy, Peter Yeski, and I have talked about this, going forward. But again, it's the town's project. And quite frankly, I just think it's gonna get muddy. I don't mind them looking over our shoulder, in terms of the mitigation work. Certainly they will have to, but.
And so, just so I'm clear, Emily, it sounds like your concern is based on your experience with DEP and really the word fund maybe being in there as DEP saying, wait a second, what are you really trying to pull here? And I think, so if we could just go through the steps. So if we have this condition included in the orders of condition, DEP does look at it. We try to explain it to them what we're trying to do. And they would say what? No, remand essentially back to the Conservation Commission for a new order of condition. I mean, what would happen if they weren't okay with this language? Just so we know, because I think the language, to Donna's point, does a good job of setting out what the response, how the mechanism is going to work. And so I think we'd all like to keep it in there because of that mechanism. And so if we were to go to DEP, what would they do to us? And then if that's, respectfully, a slap on the wrist by them to say, you're really trying to get around, then we can go back to the drawing board versus, I guess the alternative here would be to put nothing and then just have some sort of side agreement directly with the town to say, in accordance with the order of condition issued on blah, 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 this is what the language says, here's how we're going to deal with it, which, may be fine as well. But I guess I'm looking to you for guidance relative to how would DEP look at this because it has that word fund or funding in it, and what would they do?
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about some recent occurrences in the region regarding this, and then I'll speak to all of the good work that Cumberland and their team and the town has done to address those concerns. So in very recent months, over the last year, a slew of notices of intent were sent out to multiple municipalities for proposed work. And I will just say that this work, because it's all public record, had to do with utilities. And from town to town, what was coming about was that towns were simply receiving a check to put in a fund, their account, to be used at a later date for the good of wetlands and streams. Our state regulations don't have that mechanism in place. What ended up happening was the department ended up auditing notices of intent that were still in process, going back to municipalities where orders were already in place and requiring a complete redo, where actual where actual projects had to be identified and tied, to the order of conditions. Through the collaboration of Cumberland Farms and the town, you've done that. And I feel, and that's why I added all this language that you see in this draft, is really to articulate that this is a real project and it has square footage associated and it's tied. So if all parties are looking to have the word fund still in there, I think, hey, that's what's happening. But at the end of the day, it is tied to a very real project and a very real requirement to get a certificate of compliance.
Well, I really appreciate the explanation, and I think we're completely comfortable, given the front matter that you've put in there, to say this is a real project, and here's how we got here. So yeah, I think on behalf of Cumberland Farms, we're comfortable with this language.
Right, that's how Donna and I discussed it. So thank you, Donna, for helping us to identify this. By the way, I want to state that on the record.
You're most welcome.
So then my only other question is, I will keep that paragraph and that language. Do you want me to wordsmith some of the mitigation components so that they reflect the other language? So exactly, for example, where it talks about wetland seeding and woody shade planting, Shall I just continue to incorporate that same native species language, or do you want me just to keep this as is?
If I have anything to say about it, I would put the wetland species right within your area. To me, that we shouldn't just be a cookie of people that are doing the same thing they did in North Adams that they did in Adams. I think we should be something that is unique to us and be more interest in the wetland species to be put in instead of just grass. I hope I'm making any sense.
So, but that's for consistency, Emily. You made your findings and then it continues through with the condition. So I think that's, yeah, her point is well taken. I would wordsmith that, definitely include that.
We have a good relationship with DEP. We're not adversarial at all. So I'm hoping that they would look at our intent as well as our actions. So and you guys have done everything you can do too. You've done your part. So I think DEP will respect your effort. And let's have a little bit of faith. I have nothing more to say.
So, Emily, I have a question with your draft, and the first part of it is findings. I mean, would this, just from a structural standpoint, this would be incorporated into the order of conditions should the commission issue that under special conditions, right? The entire draft of this?
Yeah, and I can fine tune the heading. So there's a place on the form where it asks if there are any special conditions, and then you say see attached. And
Okay.
then typically in the upper component, we would have a bulleted list of findings, and then we would segue into the special conditions.
Okay.
And so I can clean up the document for the commission. So it's organized in that manner, and certainly number all of the conditions so that they can be cited by number. The only remaining question that I have for the commission is, we really delved into the redevelopment and the way that working with the town, the applicant's been able to come in compliance with that set of standards. Are there any other standard special conditions that Adams typically includes with their orders? Do you require 48-hour notice before construction starts? Do you require stormwater monitoring reports if there's greater than half an inch in 24 hours? We've been really focused on the redevelopment, but I acknowledge that there are other conditions out there that the commission may be used to requiring.
I mean, the standard is a 48-hour notification.
Yeah,
That is included by the commission in pretty much all its orders.
Silt fence around the construction.
Right, but that's all in their
Yeah, that's-
Is
plan.
that in there?
Plan, so
Okay.
I don't think you need
And
to
how
call that
about
out.
these signing of the DEP number prominently on one side or the other?
I think that's a
Yeah,
standard
they're all
condition.
standard.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything unusual with.
No, it just that somebody will come by and they'll just say, you didn't put the DEP number, and they'll complain to the state.
Mhm.
And we've had that done, so.
Does the commission typically require that they inspect the site after the erosion controls are in place?
Yeah, I
You
thought
just-
that was the
yes.
standard.
Yes.
Standard, we get out
That's
there.
boilerplate as far as we're concerned. We have it on all our requirements,
Yeah.
all our notices.
And does the commission typically require stormwater monitoring during those, more significant events? So sometimes it's a 1/4 inch in 24 hours, sometimes it's a 1/2 inch that you want to know that someone on the project side has inspected the erosion controls.
Right, and someone on the project is responsible. The person that's responsible must be identified to the board so that if we need to make contact with that individual, we get in contact.
And what is the typical storm rate that the commission uses? Is it the 1/4 inch or the 1/2 inch?
I don't know. Just,
Half inch.
Half
is it
inch.
1/2 inch? Okay, we're going with 1/2 inch.
Okay. So I'll add some language for the 48-hour notice. The commission will have a site inspection once they're notified that the erosion controls are installed, and that the permittee will identify their stormwater monitor, contact information to the commission, and the monitor will inspect the site whenever there's an event of a 1/2 inch of rain within 24 hours. And would certainly observe if there were any concerns, and that repairs would be made immediately upon the notification. Is there anything else that the commission typically would want to see included?
What is the proposition of having an engineer on site? What would your feelings be during the construction session? Or is that overkill?
During the entire time of construction?
Yeah,
No, that's overkill.
okay.
They're very expensive, did you know? They charge a lot per hour.
Good change. I bet there's a couple guys that love the job.
Let's
They
say,
make periodic, I mean,
Yeah,
Luke, you
they-
can speak to that, you're certainly out on site checking. You're gonna make sure that storm treat system is installed properly, right? I don't know if he's here.
Yeah, that's generally part of the standard operating procedure throughout any construction project.
yeah, I was just saying someone on the call or something like that,
Well, the
in
point
case
is,
Yeah,
there's a
you'll be
need.
provided you'll be provided a list of contacts.
Good, that's what I'm looking for.
Great.
Okay.
Anything else, Emily, or?
We're all set.
No, so the next step would be for the commission to ask whether or not there was any further discussion, including from the public. If there is not, and the commission is ready, they could close the hearing, and then they could choose to vote. If the vote is for an approval order of conditions, the motion should include approval with the special conditions as drafted and discussed. And then you would have 21 days to produce that documentation. If the applicant wants the opportunity to review and opine on a second version of the conditions after we incorporate the language, the hearing has to stay open. But if all parties are comfortable with what was discussed and recorded tonight, we could move forward with that just clerically.
I've got the nodding of heads, so that tells me to move on.
So you want to ask any of the?
Is there anyone from the audience that has a comment? There's a individual called Diane Whalen. Anyone else from the audience that would like to comment?
Excuse me, Chairman. There was a phone number that came in on the screen. Could we identify them?
Okay, who is that?
Um,
Oh,
It was just one phone number that came up. Could we get an identification while you're talking with the public?
What's the phone number?
is there somebody
I think it
that's,
was 441-3316. It came up quick. I'm not seeing it on here again.
there's,
If not,
No,
Yeah.
no,
thank you.
yep.
Tell the cat to hold her tongue. Natasha's cat is getting involved. All right, with that in mind, we're going to close the hearing.
Mhm.
And do I have a motion?
A motion to close the hearing or?
No. Well, I'm gonna close the hearing myself,
Okay,
but now do I have a motion to move to approve the NOI?
approve the NOI with conditions?
Yes,
Okay, so I guess I don't know what you're looking for as far as a motion. So is there any suggestions on the motion or?
Well, I think it's Emily outlined. First, let me ask the applicant, are you comfortable with the basis of the discussion going forward with tonight, assuming the commission approved the order of condition subject to the special conditions that were identified by Emily Stockman and discussed during the meeting with the commission members and the applicant? If you're comfortable with Emily doing some follow-up wordsmithing, then I think the point is we could go forward. So is the applicant comfortable with that, or would you prefer carrying it over for a period of time?
We're comfortable.
okay,
Okay. So it's,
Let's come up with a motion.
all right. So approve the order.
Okay.
It's,
Let's see. Let's see, approval of the order conditions with special conditions that were provided and
discussed during the meeting.
discussed during the meeting. I make a motion.
okay,
That's
is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor by roll call? Tom,
Tom Robinson, aye.
Brian,
Aye.
Natasha,
Aye.
and Jim, aye. We have unanimous? That's pretty good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Emily. Thank you. Yeah.
Emily,
Thank you. Thanks, Emily.
Humans will job.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
For the commission and for Pam and Donna, I will get this draft revised and out to Pam by email next week so that it can move forward for signature.
Okay, that sounds great.
Okay, have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye.
very
Bye.
much, everyone. Good night. Zoom is so awkward.
It is.
Zoom is so awkward.
I just don't know what I'm doing after.
So is there anything else on your agenda?
What's next?
Is there anything else on your agenda?
Yes, there is.
Yeah, we have,
We have DEP complaint on 101 Grove Street. Old and other business. The other business is DEP complaint on 101 Grove Street. Correspondence from Mark Stimson and correspondence from Bill Luttrell as a consultant. I don't know if anybody has seen this thing or looked at it.
I have.
Okay, I'd like to make a comment, Mr. Chairman.
okay,
The only time on this board that I've ever seen photography used for a determination of a violation is as a result, as it applied to specialty minerals. That violation was wetlands violation that was enormous. That violation was conducted and spearheaded by DEP. This board did not even know it existed until after the fact. This board got involved in the administration of DEP's involvement with specialty minerals. DEP went to specialty minerals, used the photography to point out where wetlands have disappeared, and used it and registered a complaint with specialty minerals. Specialty minerals in turn had to reflag all the wetlands on their property. Also, I believe, and don't quote me, but I believe the cost was in excess of $300,000. Okay. Now, that was so major that DEP was in direct contact with specialty minerals, was not in contact with us. Okay. The only time they were in contact with us was for us to oversee the mitigation or to oversee what specialty minerals was doing in order to resolve the problem. DEP took the lead on everything. Now, let me just say, we now have number 2. And number 2 is an intermittent stream with photography from 2012 and again in 2019. The property in question has changed hands at least once that I know of within that time frame, and possibly twice. We're dealing with an intermittent stream, borderline intermittent stream, and a violation as it relates to the resource area in the buffer zone of the resource area. When I looked at the letters that were submitted, what I saw was DEP using photography to look into somebody's backyard in order to determine a violation and a questionable violation. And a violation that won't even be an issue. Won't be an issue, because what is going to happen is if I'm on this board, what I'm going to say is, you have an encroachment into the buffer zone of an intermittent stream that dries up in the summertime. And that encroachment the encroachment is not within 50 feet of the resource from the drawing. And you're using a line on a photograph to determine where the intermittent stream is. And I'll bet you $100, you cannot find that intermittent stream. That intermittent stream could be 100 feet, 200 feet, in a completely different direction than what they drew on that photography. I honestly believe, DEP did the town a disservice by putting that thing out here, okay? Because I don't know what the problem is with the property or the individual who owns the property or whatever the situation is. But when the DEP is flying around, taking pictures of people's backyards over a violation no bigger than someone throwing leaves down an embankment with an intermittent stream on the bottom. This is ridiculous. And if they've got that much time, they better find something to do. Rest my case. I'm done.
Well, Tom, they were responding to a complaint.
No,
Somebody
No.
complained to them.
no, can't be.
That's what it said.
It said that the DEP's the complainant.
The office received an anonymous complaint
Yeah.
about Duke's possibly doing work in the riverfront area of the Hoosic. I don't see.
That's the way I understood it.
Hey, let me say this.
And we
It's
can't
no
just go
good.
there because it's private property. We have to,
They use photography.
yeah, that I understand.
No.
But that was to check the validity of a complaint.
What this
They
is,
didn't come to us.
they are coming to us now. I
When you're
mean,
passing the buck, don't you kind of?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's your.
That's, my argument is, this is, if we as a volunteer board are gonna get involved in this kind of stuff, this is nuts. This is crazy. You just went through a multi-million-dollar project, and we're talking about something that's not even a violation. You know, and they're using photography to prove their point. This doesn't make sense, guys.
and to go one step further, they're using photography that's not in itself totally accurate.
It's not accurate. We draw a line on a piece, I'll draw a line on this and say, here's X Brook. Of course, it's in close, so you can find it, but any brook, any intermittent stream in town. We got Pine Street Brook. I can't tell you how many times, if this standard were to be used, we'd be violating half the people in town. I just don't think it's fair. I know people don't like this guy, okay? But let's not use this board as a tool to go after this guy.
Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read parts of the Charles consultant.
Yep,
And.
I'll get off my soapbox.
Yes. Last week, Mark Stimson from MADEPWERO contacted the Adams Conservation Commission about a possible violation in the above referenced site. Mr. Stimson included some images and revealed that there has been what appears to be excavation of a gravel pit within a buffer zone of an intermittent stream. Mr. Stimson also noted that there appears to be no permit for that activity. Jim contacted me for possible ways of handling this situation. Now, I agree with some of the intent that you said, Tom, but I think we have been given something to do, and I want to get out of it as correctly as possible.
Mr. Chairman, that's your decision. Let's include within your decision, how about Singer throwing paper in the river? Where do we stand on that? Where do we stand on DEP sent us a letter, Jim, saying that there's somebody throwing paper in the river?
I think we should.
Now I got somebody mad at Duquette, so now we got to deal with Duquette. No, that's not what this board is all about. You do what you want to do, you're chairman.
Here's what Bill Trout suggested. Buffer zones are regulated under the law. You may require a different approach. I discussed with Mark, and he suggested we issue a violation notice.
What are they violating? What are they violating?
We don't know.
We can't issue.
We can't issue a notice if they're not doing anything wrong, Jim. We have no proof he's done anything wrong, other than these pictures. You know, I don't understand.
If I may ask
Sure,
him,
please.
Go ahead.
we reached out to Mr. Gardner, the building commissioner, and do you remember what his response was? Because I thought it was under a permit.
Initially, I contacted Jerry to let him know that there was a complaint that came in from the Pinnacle Park area
Okay.
in regards to the dust situation that they had a few years back,
Yep.
stating that it was getting worse and worse. They were getting upset. So Jerry was prompted to go and do a site visit at the Pinnacle to determine. But he said that he could not go on the property of Mr. Duquette's to take any kind of site visit that would be beneficial. He said, and I went over that with Jim, and Jim spoke with Jerry as well,
Okay.
so.
Well, that's the gist of it. I've got Jim, anonymous complaint. I've got an anonymous, I'm gonna be the anonymous complaint. There's a guy up on West Road, or somebody just spit on the ground, I'm gonna call it a wetland. Okay? I mean,
This is what my suggestion
yes,
is,
please.
is that we should postpone this situation and ask John Duquette to come to the next meeting we have, and then have Bill respond, and see if we can get permission to go on the land.
Or is this a complaint just because they don't like the dust? I mean, is that
There
what
you go.
the?
No, the complaint is that it is within the wetland, it is within
This is totally to the south, the dust is to the north. We get an anonymous complaint because it's subterfuge. We want to go after Duquette. So let's use the Conservation Commission as the tool. It's been done any number of times since I've been on this board. Neighbors fighting with neighbors decide they're going to turn them in for something. And I don't think we should play that role. I honestly don't. You do what you want to do, but as far as I'm concerned, you take a vote, I'm abstaining. I'm done. Stick a fork in me. I'm done.
Okay, what my suggestion is let us continue this meeting and the action till next week, and ask John Duquette to come if he wishes to the next meeting and explain what's going on.
The power of the board and requesting an individual to come before the board. The board has power, Jim. And for him to refuse to come before the board creates the impression that he's not willing to work with us. Okay? And then you're gonna get him before the board and ask him to step onto his property. And if I were advising Mr. Duquette, I'd say, no, you're not coming on my property, just like he did to the building inspector.
And then our answer would be to that is to say that and leave it go. But request trying to get him to come and point out where maybe it is exactly what you said, just someone after someone else. And then we can then make a informed conclusion.
That's right.
So I'd like to have someone make a motion that we invite John Duquette to come to the next meeting.
I just have one question that kind of confuses me, because the statement, it says, Pam, can you please ask the commission to investigate? The office received an anonymous complaint about Dukes possibly doing work on the riverfront area, the Hoosic. But DEPs didn't see anything in that, which was the actual complaint. And now he's trying to pull something totally different with the stream.
So as a board, am I hearing, Brian, do you have any comment?
No, other than, maybe you want to talk to Mark Stimson again and find out exactly what he expects us to do.
All right.
Unfortunately, when the DEP's involved, we have to make some sort of response.
I think that is an issue that is a compromise. We could postpone our meeting till we talk to Mark Stimson. I think that's a good answer. So do I have a motion to postpone our meeting to next week and then talk to Mark Stimson about more detail?
Yeah. Can I just make another suggestion?
Sure.
When you're talking to Mark, address Tom's concerns and ask him what exactly is our responsibility? Because I thought that deal with Mr. Singer was also a crock of bull, to be honest.
And we
you know,
should not,
we're not policemen.
Mhm.
policemen nor should we be.
No, you're not DEP's enforcement people either.
No, exactly.
You're the board.
Yeah,
Not
we are here to help the people in the town of Adams. I don't care what DEP does. I'm here to protect the people in the town of Adams. And I don't feel as though under this circumstances, I'm protecting a taxpayer in the town of Adams. I'm throwing them to the wolves. And I don't think it's right.
Okay, so do I have a motion where we could go back to Mark Stimson and ask for more?
I think you should, if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
just table the matter indefinitely. I'm happy to talk with you with Mark Stinson, but I don't know if you need to set up a meeting again. This may just, and quite frankly, I agree with Mr. Robinson's point. Why didn't the complainant come to the commission? If the complainant is in the town of Adams, why didn't they come before the commission and explain their concerns,
Okay, so do I have a motion to table this question?
I'll make a motion to table it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Tom Robinson, aye.
Basil, aye.
Aye, Natasha.
Brian Bishop, aye.
Okay, so we're.
Brian, it's been a pleasure working with you.
Thanks, Tom, you also.
Our last. Thank you, Don.
Last meeting
It's
with Brian?
It's the last meeting for Brian.
Yep.
I've enjoyed working with you briefly, Brian.
Thanks. I've actually been on for a while.
Let me read his resignation.
Okay.
I'm writing you to inform you.
That's.
And I am resigning from the Conservation Commission effective 6/1/2021. It's been a pleasure working with you these past years, and I will be available for the next meeting so that we can have a forum and we can help out with the companies. Please notify all concerned. Thank you, Brian. Brian came to us looking for something to do. And we certainly gave him that, right? So,
I don't remember looking for something to do. I remember being corralled at corner lunch.
There you go. You couldn't avoid him.
and I didn't even pay for the breakfast.
Oh, yeah.
Brian, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
We have another
Resignation.
resignation.
Yep.
He is outlined October
October 1st.
1st, 2021. Or when a replacement is seated.
Correct.
So Tom is submitting my formal resignation. And I was willing to give Tom this job right here.
No.
Stay.
Oh, thank you.
And that's how I've got him to
Yeah,
stay
no.
all these days.
Yeah.
And all these times.
Threaten me, threaten me.
Because I threatened, I said, I'll make you the chairman. He said,
No.
no. I'd rather be yelling at you than.
Yeah, exactly. It was good to see that, the town got a $6 million grant for the Glen. Fabulous, fabulous. I'll tell you,
So we will be coming before the commission.
Yeah.
Very soon, I hope next month.
before October.
Yes.
Yeah, please,
I'll make sure.
please, please.
And that's our job, is to find people to take place.
Yes.
They're never gonna take you guys' place.
Has, the selectmen put out ads, trying to find something? Good.
We've got a couple of names as possibilities.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
especially now, I mean, with the Glen coming up again, I think it's great time, fabulous. But I think things are pretty much in order as far as that project is concerned.
I think
Pull the trigger as quick
that
as we can.
that project almost beat us to death. So, well,
Yeah, the whole Glen beat me to death.
Yeah, well,
I go back to the caucus for crying out loud. That's how far back I go. Man, oh man, I got beat up for 700 condos up there. Oh, I'll tell you. You were on.
I was on
You took the beating too.
Yeah.
Oh, those were great
Yeah,
times.
yeah.
Oh. Every environmental group in the county was after me.
Were they really?
Oh.
Save the Glen.
Obscene phone calls. They called me all kinds of things. Didn't bother me, you know. Anyway,
I have a motion to adjourn.
move to adjourn.
Do I have a second, Brian?
Second,
There you go.
All in favor, say aye.
Bye.
Aye.
Natasha, we're just you and me, Gib.
Gonna hold the fort down.
We'll do it.
Take care, Brian. See you
take
around.
care.
Thanks again, Brian.
Thanks. Yep.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a good night, guys.
You
Night.
too. Night.
Night.
We went out with a bang.